so you can have our official. And so welcome everyone to Zero Projects Community Conversations, and more importantly, our mentorship opportunity. We are excited because we have someone that will be bringing from the caucus an amazing policy information on some information we need to know as we're moving forward with policy. The up and latest, the most innovative. I will definitely, I call them more than just my friend on so many levels. So we've already done our names, our pronouns, our state, and our check-in question for those on the recording was, what flowers would you like in your bouquet if someone was to give that to you? I am Deidre Speaks Johnson. I'm the National Programs and Strategic Planning Manager for the Zero Project. And there we go. I wanted to make sure that you all know coming up real soon, and Eric is not on for today, but we have our third Thursday update coming out this week, where we will be sharing any information that is ongoing business, trainings, new business updates. And if you have any information that you would like to submit, please make sure to forward that on to our Eric Flighter or submit the Google form, and you will have these slides as well before or no later than the third Tuesday of the month. So let's get into it. Our mentorship opportunity. I have this amazing bio and opportunity to be able to share with you, not just my friend, my brother, my dad, my uncle, that cool uncle, all of that is how I know them, but even more importantly, they are the movement fathers for so many of us. And of course, the director of programs for Thrive SS. There is not a session or way that you cannot and have not shown up, but more importantly, because of the Thrive SS mission, which is to achieve health equity for Black same-gender loving men living with HIV through direct support, advocacy, and building collective community power. I cannot believe that Malcolm started as a volunteer in 2016 and has co-founded the PSAN, the Political and Social Action Network, and that has been created and now is the Silver Lining Project. An intervention that is for and to support and enhance the lives of Black gay men over the age of 50. I don't know why and how this is happening when you're only 25, my love. So, but you're planning for the future. I love the way you think. And all of these programs exist under Thrive SS. The one piece that we may have seen Malcolm in spaces, and I'm sharing this because we may know them personally, but you need to know the history of the folks that are being brought into this space. And in 2020, during the pandemic, Malcolm co-produced a documentary film called Colors on the Wall, a film about aging and thriving. The catch is thriving with HIV. They are absolutely passionate about public policy, especially policies impacting people of color, the LGBTQ plus community, and people living with HIV. He is the federal policy chair on the U.S. People Living with HIV Caucus Steering Committee, and he represents Thrive SS and HIV and Aging Policy and Action Coalition, or I think that's HAPAC. And was recently elected as the co-chair of the Georgia HIV Justice Coalition. He has presented for so many organizations. He has not organizations, but presentations at various conferences, and has been in the most amazing 24-year-old relationship with the Stewarts, Nelson Reid, who I'm always trying to introduce them together as if they've never met each other because they are perfect for each other. And they were able to get married in September of 2015 when marriage equality became the law of the land. And I quote, "I am passionate about our legal rights to equity as human rights and citizens of this country, and I do not want to get married until it was the law in the I can't even say the word, municipality where I lived." That is quoted from the great, the legend, the icon, the everything, the Malcolm Reid, and I am turning it over to you for your presentation. I can stop and share whatever you need me to do, but I got to. Welcome.
Thank you, Deidre. Thank you so much. So first of all, I didn't bring any slides because I know that this was a community conversation. And I think sometimes slides, tend to, make people feel a little intimidated. So I think we're just going to talk, right? So a couple of things. That bio was written a year ago. So me and Stuart have celebrated our 25th year in September. And then we've made a change to our mission at Thrive SS. And when I say this, I don't want anybody to get upset because I'm going to tell you why we did this. We took same gender loving men living with HIV out of our mission. So our mission is to, our mission now is about health equity for Black same gender loving men. And because when we look around and we look at health equity issues, we all know that health equity is a problem for people of color in general. Having said that, I will also say that even though our mission says Black same gender loving men, we turn no one away. If you come to us and say you need to be tested for any STIs, HIV, whatever, we're going to get that done for you. We're going to link you to care. We're going to link you to mental health support. We're going to link you to food, to clothing. We're going to try to link you to housing, but we all know in Atlanta, that's an extremely tall order. But we just want to make sure that our community is getting the things we need. We live in a state where the Affordable Care Act was not implemented, and so we have people who are below the poverty line, but still not getting the services they need. Our governor tried to placate us by drafting an 1115 waiver that would have given Medicaid to people living with HIV, but it still was going to fall short of access for most of the population. And it didn't pass anyway. And so, we still live in a state where there are so many people living with HIV and other infirmities, people living with all kinds of things that are not getting the care that they need because they were so stubborn in our state house as to say, and I have to say this, we don't want this thing because the black guy drafted it, and even after Barack Obama is gone, they're still fighting against affordable health care for the population. So we are here to stand in that gap wherever we can. And as my bio says, I've always been a policy nerd. I casted my first vote for Ronald Reagan. Against Ronald Reagan. Oh my God, did I say for Ronald? And I remember that day like it was yesterday. And I've always been an advocate for not only voter registration, but voter education. You can tell people to register to vote all you want, but when they get in the voting booth, they have to know what they're voting for or against. And they have to understand what the process is. They have to understand that even though you vote for somebody, you could vote for president or whoever, but they are not a dictator. They have to work with other people to get things done. People voted for Barack Obama and then wanted to know why things weren't getting better. And I said, well, have you taken a look at the obstruction that is going on in Washington? And yeah, well, he's the president. Yes, he is the president, but he is not a dictator. And so educating people is extremely important. And so that brings me to why I do the work. I'm so proud of the work that we did with the Policy Action Committee in writing the policy briefs for the last AIDSWatch. And I can't take 100%, we can't take 100% credit for it, because what we did was we had one of the best documents that we could ever use as a resource, and that was Demanding Better. Demanding Better is a document that was written by the US PLHIV Caucus, and it's an HIV federal policy agenda by people living with HIV. And in that document, we covered everything from concretely elevating meaningful involvement of people living with HIV, proactively creating and affirming human rights environment for people living with HIV, addressing inequities and stigma, adding sex workers and immigrants living with HIV as priority populations, and affirmatively committing to improving quality of life for people living with HIV. So those are some of the things that we wrote in our briefs. We were charged with writing the civil and human rights policy brief. And, that just that's where I live, right? We've got to make sure that our government officials understand what people need to live life abundantly, live life equitably, and thrive. And so, yeah, I guess that's my opening statement. I'll take any questions. Like I said, I want this to be a conversation, so let's talk.
So I guess I can start this off, Malcolm.
Mm-hmm.
So the Demanding Better is absolutely amazing. And one of the things that I do know, especially here in Texas, is that voter education is crucial. But also, one of the things that we've learned is asking the people, what is important to you? How can I get you to vote? But also understanding what you are voting for, because Texas is really under attack in so many different ways. And so it is vital to really figure out untraditional how to get people to vote. Registration ain't it, because you can register 1,000 people and you might get 10 of that 1,000 to vote. But if you are educating them and asking them what is important to them and how can I really bring the message to you. And one way that I'm learning is artwork is a vital tool to use, especially for people that have issues in reading. So the artwork helps in that field. But one of the things that I really admire is that being on the ground and connecting with the individual, not just on election day, but all the time, is really important, especially for the HIV community, because I mean, they're stripping us. So I love the Demanding Better. I use it. So that's what I want to say.
Thank you very much. Kamaria, I saw your hand.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, I was, sorry, I was just going to ask if you had advice, because I know we've had this conversation like in the larger groups, but for folks that like want to take something like Demanding Better and bring it to state level, because demanding better is a federal policy agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And we know most changes won't happen just because the federal policy goes through. But what advice do you have for folks that want to bring it to a state level? Like, what groups on a state level would you need to bring together to make that happen? And yeah, just because I've been thinking about this ever since we put it out. Like, how do we zoom in on this type of work?
Yeah, so the first thing that I would say is in the Policy Action Committee, we are starting to work on state issues and state bills. Kevin drafted a wonderful spreadsheet that we are tracking state laws that are impacting people living with HIV, impacting the trans community, impacting the LGBT community, and even more importantly, impacting voting rights itself. As you know, our friends on the right, they have a system. They put something in a state and that state becomes the petri dish so that they can test it out and see if it works. And then it spreads throughout the other red states. So, for example, in the state of Georgia, our governor, during the whole John Ossoff, Raphael Warnock election and the whole Trump election fraud and all of that nonsense, decided that he was going to put together a law that said there would be a commission that if they don't like the vote count, they can change it. It's a little more complicated than that. I'm making it sound simple, but without reading the text of the law. But the basis of it is they want to be able to change the results of things that they don't like. He also just passed a law that says that if they don't like what the DA of a county, the district attorney of any county is doing, is prosecuting, or rather, a commission, a non-judicial commission, can remove that DA. And this is not about going to the Supreme Court. This is not about going through any judicial process. This is a group of guys, a group of girls that kind of agree with this person, and they're saying, hey, we don't like that, and we want to remove this person. So we see all of these laws about that are leading us, down the path of dictatorship, and we've got to fight them. So in answer to your question, there are advocacy groups in every state. So my first thing is, who are they? Find out who they are and join forces. One of the other reasons why we took HIV out of our mission is because, as I said in my opening, when you take away Medicaid from people, you're not just impacting people living with HIV. You're impacting people living with a whole lot of other things. As a 65-year-old man, I've got high blood pressure. I've got type 2 diabetes. I've got a little arthritis, except when I'm on the dance floor, Deirdre. But I let it bother me after I'm done. But we've got to make sure that we are aligning ourselves with those folks who are advocating, for those things, because no matter what we do know is that the right has the airwaves, right? They've got Fox Lies. I don't call it Fox News, Fox Lies. They've got Fox Lies, they've got Newsmax, they've got all of this stuff, right? And they are counting on people who are uninformed, misinformed, and who will believe everything that they say and will not change the channel. And in order to fight that, you've got to join forces with other people in the community who are knowledgeable and who are experiencing some of those things. Because one of the most powerful things is when you go and talk to somebody and they say, well, no, you know, I don't like this, blah, blah, blah. But then you talk to them and say, well, hey, Miss Jones, anybody in your family have Alzheimer's? Yeah, my mother has Alzheimer's, or I know somebody that has. Did you know that if we were a Medicaid expansion state, some of those Alzheimer's drugs would not cost as much and you'd have better access? Oh, really? You know, it's the same people who did not know that there was a difference between Obamacare and the ACA, right? Because the right wanted to give them a boogeyman. So it gave them Barack Obama and Obamacare. But when they heard about what the ACA was doing, they were, oh, okay, we're for that. So that would be the answer to the question, joining forces with, you know, other people in the state. And then the second thing is, and something that we're doing at Thrive right now, is getting out into the rural areas of the state and doing a needs assessment, right? Asking people, what do you need from your government? And get them to start talking about their healthcare, because I guarantee you 98% of the people are not happy with their healthcare, even when they do have access to the ACA, because things are still expensive. But we know that the ACA makes things a little bit better for them. So if you talk to them about and get them to talk about, well, you know, why are you so afraid of, you know, whatever, and get them to talk, you can now have a conversation and let them know, no, this is the truth, and always give them sources. Sources, not sauces, sources. Always give them sources of where to look and where to read more information, so that they are not sitting there watching, you know, these people sit there and lie to them every day. So that's my answer. And I think, and Kamaria, I hope I answered your question. And then Wanda, I've got you next. Then I've got, I think it was Shakina. I'm sorry.
We got.
I don't know why I want to pronounce your name.
But we got Wanda, Melanie, and then Shakina.
Okay, all right. So Wanda, fire away.
Thank you. Hopefully not too hard. But anyway, you hit several nails on the head, Malcolm, that are so true. Number one, we have to educate. We have to educate the voters. And it cannot start a month or 2 months before an election. It almost has to be a year-round thing where we go, as you say, out into the communities, where we meet at community centers, where we meet at maybe not our favorite denomination of church, but where they will bring people in and you can have conversations and you can ask that question, what do you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing, yes, there are advocacy entities in most states, and we have to, rather than just bringing folks together to attend a day in our state capitol to do this or that, and I'm trying to say this politically correctly here, or rather than just going. Our advocacy entity also needs to be going out into the community and having some dedicated conversations on beyond HIV, because a lot of people won't come to a meeting or anything that's the focus of the top of the conversation. If we say that we want to talk about healthcare, about aging well, about all these things, because things start with our state legislators, and many of our state legislators want to go on to be federal legislators. And if they're bad at the state level, they're going to be worse when they get to DC. So I want to applaud you for everything and just You rock my world.
Thank you, Wanda. Melanie?
In response to Kamaria's question of how do you sense demanding better is federal level policy? Well, I'll tell you, Kamaria, demanding better is my Bible. Wherever I go, demanding better comes with me. And no matter if you're on city council, community, a group, a church, the Maryland Department of Health's HIV planning group, the Greater Baltimore HIV Health Services Planning Council, the Baltimore City HIV Prevention Group, Annapolis, you're going to hear about demanding better, because demanding better is the proper roadmap from which to begin the work that you need to do to help the people that you are elected to serve, not govern, serve. If they could think about their purpose is serving, we'd have better outcomes in our states, in our cities, local jurisdictions, and even on the federal level. But that is a document for us, by us. And we need to own it as such and carry it wherever we go. And education is an ongoing, forever. When we aren't able to do it, we have to make sure we have groomed somebody who will take the place when we aren't able to anymore. So that's how I see things. And I am a member, I live in Baltimore, Maryland, but I am a member of the Texas Strike Force. Why? Because anywhere someone is marginalized, underserved, underrepresented, and pushed to the side, we need bodies. It doesn't matter where our physical address is, we need bodies to push back and to speak up and speak out. And look, you are all my family. If you need me for anything, hey, let me know, I'll be there. Because we need to right all these wrongs and not be a person on the sidelines seeing it happen. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Melanie. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm sorry, I lost.
I got you, Shekinah.
Okay.
Thank you, Deidre.
It might be my southern accent. Is Shekinah?
You know, Shekinah is the traditional way of pronouncing my name, but it doesn't work for me. I go by Shekinah.
Shekinah, right.
Shekinah. It's confusing if you typically use the other traditional pronunciation. So, okay, so I think I know the answer to my question, but before I get there, I'll just share a little bit. So like in Pennsylvania, we are undergoing this week a subtle shift of which my red flags have come up. And so what that means for me is the Pennsylvania House has approved the Fairness Act. And so we have a majority House and we knew that it would go through. I was at the rally in Harrisburg that Kendra Stevens and a few other people spoke. Here in Pennsylvania, the governor's office, the LGBTQIA Affairs Executive Director is a trans man. He's a lawyer from Philly. His name is Henry Sias, and we are in good hands. I feel great about that. He's also a part of the Aging Working Group, which I'm on. We're not entirely sure how it's going to go on the 5th of June when it goes to the Senate. I'm always optimistic and hopeful that there'll be a few people that are wanting for Pennsylvania to be a part of the 22 other states in the Northeast corridor. So for anyone that's not familiar with the Fairness Act, we've been trying in the state evidently to get this enacted for over 23 years. It's a long time coming. Right now in Allegheny County, which is a county that I live in, as well as Philadelphia, are non-discriminatory counties. We have non-discriminatory laws in place for housing, employment, and for public space. The rest of the state does not. And that's what part of this bill is. And we are a big state, and there's a lot of rural areas where community are living and are terrified. And so we're trying to bring us up into the modern world, but I don't know if it'll happen or not, to be honest. I'm hopeful. But this week in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette was an article written by a gentleman from the Alliance Defending Freedom out of Arizona. I don't know if you're familiar with the organization. Mm-hmm. He's getting stuck into Pennsylvania politics, and already Malcolm, he's doing his misinformation. He's mixing up what the bill is really about and trying to confuse voters in a very effective way. Mm-hmm. And so the Western PA LGBTQ older adults advocacy team in the legislative subcommittee, we have crafted a letter to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, which we are in the process of finalizing. Now, I, as an individual, I, as a member of that body, identifying as a trans, non-binary woman, have a responsibility to have my own response, which we are going to be deciding whether it's going to be separate or used together. I wrote a really good piece, and I expect to get heat from Arizona from it, you know, because, well, I just do. I write well and I'm effective, and I know that they're not going to be happy with what I've written, to be quite honest, and I'm okay with that. That was my intent, was to really kind of go, hey, no, that's not okay. And so I'm involved in not only HIV, but all of the LGBTQ issues in the state. Wanda, you heard me speak at PASHA. All of those topics are like, is a part of, like, if I was a political person, it would be part of my platform. And so many of these things are like front and center. And, you know, I'm a national prep person as well. So I bring a lot to every person I'm talking to. And I like being on the street, talking to the average person about living. And that's what I do well. And that's where I'm effective, I feel. I'm getting involved with a lot of state organizations, and they're welcoming me into rooms so that our voice can be heard. And I'm really encouraged by that. Yeah. But, you know, I've said to leaders in this state, I said, I'm hearing from different communities that are living rurally that their voices aren't being heard. And that affects how people vote. If you don't feel hopeful, you're not going to vote. you're just gonna go, oh, same old day, same old story, and just not even, want to be engaged. So I've said to those leaders, both in Harrisburg and here in Pittsburgh, few people in Philly, not much. I want to be funded to be able to go on the road, and I see the value in that. As a trans woman going into rural Pennsylvania, that's like, you all know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. That's like dangerous.
Exactly.
And, but because of who I am, that's where I break everything down. And I feel like I'm really good at it. I've been doing it for a long time. So the more that people are able to just see people for being people and to hear what we're all working on, that's how people are going to be able to realize they need to vote a different way. And I'm hearing, and maybe this is where my question is, I'm not familiar with demanding better. Is this the book that I, need to really kind of get a grip on so that I can have that pathway to delivering the message?
I would say it is something for everyone and something for everyone to read and then add to. I think it is a starting point of a conversation that, what is so good about this manifesto, if you will, is that it was written by people living with HIV from all over the country, right? And so we got, perspectives from people in California, people in the Midwest, people on the East Coast and in the South. And so we were able to take all of those thoughts and put them into this document. I take absolutely a quarter of a half of a percent for the work, because I know that, there were meetings and it took almost a year and a half to write the document, and I wasn't on all the calls, and I read some things and some drafts as they were coming out and said, gave my 2 cents, but this was a collective effort of the caucus steering committee and so many other people, and it was reviewed by some of the titans in advocacy, and so once it was finished, then we did kind of a roadshow, rolling it out. We did some webinars, and this was all during the pandemic. We did some webinars and things like that, and just to get it out in front of people. But I think that, and I applaud Melanie for saying what she said, because we have to continue to talk about it. It is a living document, right? We talked about human rights, and we talked about adding sex workers, and we talked about protecting trans people. But at the time that we wrote it, some of these absolutely ridiculous anti-trans bills had not been yet introduced or even thought of. And now we're seeing, more and more and more. And now, they're voting against gender affirming care, whether you are a child that has your parents' permission or not. You can't get it. Just like they're doing with, reproductive rights and everything else. So it's the party of get your hands off, get the government hands off of my business has now become the proprietor of putting the government's hands on your business. And we have to make sure that we are sending that message, because the message is this: if we don't like what you do, we are going to pass a law to prevent you from doing it. We don't care what that thing is. Don't be fooled and think that I like driving my red Prius, or don't be fooled by saying I like driving my red Ford F-150. They may decide I don't like F-150s anymore, and we don't like people who drive them, and we're going to pass a law to stop that. And it sounds ridiculous and trite, but that's what's happening. I mean, it is, and it's happening more and more every time. Every night I come home and I turn on the news, and let me tell you, I watch all the news. I watch MSNBC. I used to really pay attention to Fox, but now that they came out and said, you know, in the Dominion trial that yes, we were in fact lying, which we all knew. But I just want to see how they're controlling people's minds. And we know that this is what's happening. So we have to make sure that every way that we can, however we can do it, and do like they do. If we find something that works, if you find something that works in Pennsylvania when they're trying to pass an anti-trans law or they're trying to restrict voting rights, call me. Hey, Malcolm, this is what we did in Pennsylvania. It worked. It might not work in Georgia, but you know what? We got to try, because that's exactly what happens. They try something and they spread it like we're worried about what's happening in Tennessee. Thank God the CDC stepped in Tennessee and provided some of that funding. But you can bet your bottom dollar that they're going to come up with a response to that, or they're going to do it in another state. You know, the old movie adage, when you saw a movie ad on TV, coming to a theater near you. That's what every time I hear a new policy out of the right, I say it's coming to a theater near you. They're going to test it, make sure it works, and then they're going to bring it to you. So what we've got to do is say, okay, we defeated this. Zero Project is the perfect example. That's why criminalization laws have been either reformed or repealed, because Zero said, you know what? Let's track these. Let's track our successes. And so that is the one thing in Georgia that we were able to do. We got our law changed, and it passed overwhelmingly. We only had 2 dissenting votes, but it was because we were using the same strategies that Zero was using in other states. And so once we find something that works, hey y'all, check it out. Don't put it on social media though. Call your friend, because we don't want them to know what we're getting ready to do. You know, but call somebody and say, hey, you can do this, you can do this. That's why, you know, Melanie brought up the Texas Strike Force. I'm putting together a meeting with those folks and saying, okay, how can we implement some of this in Georgia? How can we implement some of this? Because these are the things that are working. And once we find something that works, let's stick with it and ride with it.
You know, the reason why I brought up Matt Sharp and the Alliance Defending Freedom is that this is their like wedge. This is the beginning wedge into Pennsylvania politics. Mm-hmm. And I have said, and I've been drumming the beat to a few people here, if the Fairness Act, HB 300, passes on June 5th, I'm already prepared to approach the governor on creating Pennsylvania, because of the Fairness Act, creating Pennsylvania to be a trans refuge sanctuary state like California, Illinois, Maryland, Michigan, you know, because that's a part of being fair. You know, all people have the same rights. So, you know, if the governor is willing to sign, has already stated he will sign the bill once it's on his desk, it would not be politically advantageous for him to go, but we're not going to do a trans. I mean, it would just be like insane. Yeah, I mean, we have a large number of people in the state that identify as being trans. So I'll let somebody else speak though.
Thank you, Shakita. Thank y'all so much for this. And I think normally, so for those that may be new to the space, what we do every other month is we have someone come in and share some information, excuse me, If you're coming to Virginia in 19 days, please bring your allergy medication. Just want to go ahead and throw that out there as well. Because the pollen is right and rough and real in Virginia.
Let me jump in real quick. And this company is not paying me, okay? I'm just telling you. I was one of the worst allergy sufferers. I had allergies in New York, okay? And when I moved to Georgia, I got to the point where there were times when I just couldn't breathe. I had to go to Grady and get oxygen. My allergies have always been horrible. This year, while everybody else around me is having a horrible time with their allergies, I'm not having a problem. You know why? I started using Navage, the suction thing that you put in it's almost like a neti pot, but it's much easier to use. And I use it in the morning and at night. It sucks out all of that stuff out of my nasal passages. And even my eyes don't itch as much. I'm telling you guys, I'm telling everybody who will listen, because that's the only thing that is different. You know, I'm still taking my allergy medicine like I was, but when I use that Navage all year, I mean, I do my Navage in the morning. I do my 2 squirts of Flonase, walk out the house, go walk Samson. Before, Stuart used to have to walk Samson in the spring. I couldn't even walk him. And I'm not having a problem. So anyway, off topic, but you know.
No, it's on topic because I keep I've been, here, there, and everywhere. For sure. This is what the community conversations is really about, is having these conversations today, having Malcolm in, and trust me, at some point, all of you all will be coming in. Texas Strike Force is another leading resource. We will be having them to come in and speak about what they have been doing and how they have been monitoring and completely not even starting. They've already set the tone of how monitoring community and making sure that community is informed. And that's what this space is about, is sharing things that are happening, that are innovative, tools that we can use amongst each other in different states. We normally would do a state update and go through every single state. I know we have about 15 minutes to go do some state updates. As I'm getting ready to see Tana's hand. If anyone from any state has any updates for your state, then please let us know, update, raise your hand, and we can do that in that sense instead of going through all of the states. But definitely want to continue this conversation because we are seeing these things popping up, and these are best practices or things that you can incorporate into your state movements as we are moving through. Now, thank y'all. When I say we are so excited to have everyone, new faces, old faces, all faces in these ways. So glad to have you all here. Coming in, we had a little technical difficulties. I fixed it, Kevin. I didn't say it the other way. But we will make sure, but this is the space. If there are other topics that you all would like to talk about, I know status neutral is something that's coming up, going to start coming up, especially in the HIV CRIM space as we're moving forward. So we kind of want to at least get on the forefront and on the pulse of what that may and may not look like for folks, especially in the CRIM world. But of course, the biggest piece is expanding outside of just this HIV space and looking beyond just HIV, because this is affecting everyone at the state level and on the federal level. Tana, and then after Tana, we're going to hand it over to Wanda.
So, I live in Houston, but it's Texas. But one of the things that, that I've learned throughout the years is taking bits and pieces from like PWN Policy Fellowship that I took, SPIJ, Zero SPIJ. I took bits and pieces from that. But one of the main things is really, when we talk about coalitions, state coalitions, is really training our people throughout the year on the issues before session starts and after session starts. But how do you do that for people living with HIV? You got to do it with your allies. So, that is one thing that we learned, that we can't do this work by ourselves. We need allies to do it. But also when we think about, you know, horrible bills, because I have to say on Advocacy Day, they had the trans rally all at the same time. So even though it was HIV Advocacy Day, we sat down in the Retanya in Austin, and we dropped 2,000 cards for our trans community. Because one of the things is our governor is really pushing to hurt our babies, our trans babies, and that is ridiculous, along with reproductive rights and things like that. But one of the things that's new this year in session is that we have a person living with HIV that has written a bill, a decrim bill, even though it has not gone anywhere. But Vinton Hill is popping our HIV. What is it? HIV is more like testing, routine testing. 3375, it has gotten through. This is the first time, and I've been on a rapid response team for this is my 6th year, and that has moved and is waiting to be voted in the Senate, just waiting to go and see how far that goes. But that is something that is really needed, is routine testing, because a lot of women think that when they go do their blood work, they get an HIV test. No, they're not. But this session is really, I can only say this: all eyes on Texas is on Texas. But one thing that I do know, we stand and we fight, no matter what and what we have to do, how we have to do it, and who we need to bring into that room to get it done.
Exactly. And then Wanda, I see your hand, but I just want to get this in. You know, as I was mentioning before, we know that, you know, the people on the right, we know that they own the airwaves, and we know that they've got people, but we also have to get to the point where we're about changing hearts and minds. It ain't easy, but we know that going out into the rural areas, as Shakina said, going out into the rural areas is about changing hearts and minds, because, you know, some of these towns, they ain't never seen a trans person, they ain't never seen a Black person, and if they seen a Black person, anyway, I mean, not even go there. But, you know, it's like, and so all they hear and see is the boogeyman narrative that they see on their news. And so it's about going there, showing up and saying, hey, see, I'm human. And, you know, I want the same rights and privileges that everybody else does. I want to be able to be me. And so, you know, that's the important thing. I think a lot of times in this HIV work, we preach to ourselves. We do a good job. We can get a rally going and we are preaching, and there ain't nobody in the audience that disagrees with us. Well, you know, it's time to stop that. We got to talk. I make sure that when I post something, you know, about policy and everything else, I make sure that I post it publicly on Facebook, so that everybody else, and if somebody wants to challenge me, come on, let's have a debate. So, you know, make sure we're doing that. So I just wanted to get that in. Wanda, go ahead.
Thanks, Malcolm. That's an excellent point. Because we can't educate if we don't share what we're doing. I really have just 2 questions. Deirdre, are these conversations going to be ongoing after PHINAC?
Yes, they will be ongoing. And that's why I'm so grateful for Zero Project as Kamaria has transitioned to her new role. My new role is now working and doing this, and with our mentorship, I think we might be doing some workarounds where we'll be doing more of this community conversation. That's why I love Malcolm, opening the floor and really having real conversation about what's going on. So we'll be having that every other month, and then our regular state check-ins every month. We will, you know, next month.
Okay, so what's Kamaria's new role? Wait a minute, you can't just.
She's the co-director.
Okay.
Oh, we thought something got past us, didn't we? But anyway, the other thing is many states have made progress. We modernized our laws here in North Carolina. Georgia has done what Georgia has done. Indiana is doing good stuff. We know Iowa was the spearhead and whatnot. With these devils that are currently leading legislators in almost all 50 of the states, are we going to have to go back and redo some of what we've already done? Does that make sense?
Say that again, Wanda. I'm sorry, I missed that.
That's okay. With the devilment that's being perpetrated upon us by elected officials, you know, and the demonizing LGBTQ, trans, abortions, the whole 9 yards, and that is not necessarily just about HIV, but HIV comes into those arenas. Is that going to impact any of the work that we have already successfully done in our HINAC work, or might we broaden our parameters to include some of this insanity?
So
is that too much?
No. So I would say this: laws, you know, laws are fragile.
Yes.
Never know. You know, I think Roe versus Wade is the example, right? 50 years of precedents and everything else, and you get a conservative court, and now all of a sudden everything changes. You know, my husband and I go to bed every night and think that tomorrow we might not be married, right? We'll still be together, but we might not be legally married. So we always have to be vigilant. As far as the HIV criminalization laws, judging from what I've seen, we've made sure that the opposition, if there was any opposition, that they understood that the science is there to prove it, right? Yeah. You know, and even though there's science is there to prove a whole lot of other things, but with HIV criminalization, we have proven that, number one, if I am on my medication, I cannot transmit HIV if I am undetectable. And so sending that message, and now that message having the media impact that it's having, I don't see them. And guys, it's starting to thunder here, so I hope I don't lose connection. But I don't see them changing. But again, I'm just a guy on Zoom talking to y'all, and who knows what might happen, right? So, Wanda, I see your hand. I mean, Melanie, I see your hand, and then Shakina.
I just want you to realize that we're always going to have to be vigilant, almost to hyper vigilant, because the opposition are sneaky and tricky, and they will use terminology that's different from the ones we are accustomed to help us track what's going on. And they will try to sneak something in, and before we get wind of really what it's all about, they've gone back to reform and modernization and repeal. Maryland is a progressive democratic state, okay? But we found trying to repeal our criminal law, ignorance. They don't want to know the science. They only want to know the late 80s, early 90s, and that the law needs to be there because it works. They won't listen to the science. So we have a ultra mandate to Educate, educate, educate. Not just legislators, not just their staff, every single human being. Do you know in Maryland, we have 3 EHE jurisdictions. 2 of them don't even talk about HIV, or very rarely, but they're EHE jurisdictions. The chair and the vice chair of the Judiciary Proceedings Committee live in Montgomery County, one of the ones that does not talk about HIV. So they don't think, why are you trying to do this? HIV is not a thing. So you have to keep HIV in the discussion. You have to expand it, but you cannot stop talking about HIV until people get the science and the modernization of treatment and the fact that there's PrEP, PEP, that the other parties can be just as responsible and they should not be prosecuting because of HIV.
Thank you, Melanie. So passionate. Shakina?
So when I was in Harrisburg and I was meeting with quite a few House representatives, I brought up HIV criminalization. We're one of 10 states, right? So I was asking questions around it. And what kept coming up was, oh, I think that was a part of a package. And then I would say, well, what does that mean? I'm not familiar with that. And allow for them to share what the experience was. And what I'm hearing is that we were sold out. We were like traded for something else and we weren't good enough to get the vote. They added it to something else, and in that trade, we didn't get passed. And I said to each one of them, you're talking about human lives, people's lives. So there's a lot of people in the state that have no idea that we even have laws against them.
And that's a part of the education piece. We're going to continue to make sure that we're getting the word out, and especially we've been talking about rural areas. I think every state that is represented today, rural areas is represented in each of those states. So we are going to be on the forefront of making sure to getting that information out. I do want to turn this over to Kevin. We are at 7:30. And this is going to be, yes, ongoing conversations and topics. And please feel free. I'm going to drop my email in the chat. If y'all have other topics and continuations, it sounds like we might need to have some continued conversation about this as well. And also how to tap in. Kevin's already put it in the chat, how to get into our make sure if you want to become a member, you have that for the caucus, as well as our policy action team. I'm also on that committee. It's amazing. Join us. And then also I want to, if anyone has any state updates, please let us know. And then HINAC, I think, Kevin, are you going to go, are you going to do our plug for HINAC?
Yeah, I just, before we leave, I just have a few quick announcements. One, wanted to ask if we would send all the links that have been dropped into the chat out with the recording, and we'll do that. Secondly, I just put a link in, I think I've got something else in my clipboard now, but I just put a link in the chat for people living with HIV. We are offering 150 no-cost free registrations for virtual registration at HINAC. That will come out well as well. If you want to register for HINAC and join us virtually, that's there. And then also, I just want to end tonight saying, I think what we're all discussing here is the importance of building relationships. And that means that all of us go to the State House. We may not agree with a lot of the people in the House or the Senate, but if we always tell them the truth or say the words that hardly ever get said anymore, I don't know, but let me find out and I'll get back to you. And we start building the necessary relationship we have with state legislators, we can start making some change. But if we never do that, if we never start building the relationships, nothing's ever going to change in these red states. And with that, I'll turn it back to Deidre so we can sign off, and thank you all for coming this evening.
This is why I love the CRO team. Yes, I am a little biased on a lot. And someone had asked a question. I know I can say in Virginia, we know that we're not finished. We are definitely going to have to go back and look at some stuff with the laws that we modernized here. And we also know our political reality is real in Virginia, and knowing what to do. And that's where, you know, for us, we are focusing on the education of the public so that they know that these things are happening, what the next move is, why voter engagement and registration, and just awareness and on issues is really, really important. And then also learning and leading from other states like Maryland, like Texas, like Georgia, like Pennsylvania, and many more, Iowa and Idaho and Indiana that are represented on these calls. So thank y'all so much. Thank you for working with us and through us with this, the little difficulty we had just logging in, coming back, joining in. Malcolm, thank you for this conversation and setting us up for the rest of our mentorship conversations and opportunities that are going to be available through all of us, because we all are subject matter experts and are all bringing amazing things to the table. I want you to know, if you don't know, somebody loves you. Somebody knows that you're valuable, you're important, you are enough, and you are just absolutely perfect. And we appreciate you taking the time today to come in, have this conversation. And more importantly, we love the work that you're doing for yourself, for your community, and for everyone else in this world. So I love you, and I mean it. I mean that with intention. And make sure to have an amazing rest of your evening on purpose.
Thanks, everybody.